Good morning. We've already talked a little bit about how the universe is organized, so where the sun is, where the planets are, and in general how they interact with one another. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about how the planets move instead. We're going to specifically focus on here our Mother Earth and how it moves in the universe. So most importantly, we look at how it's organized. The equator cuts through the middle of the Earth and splits it into the northern and southern hemispheres. The equator splits the Earth into the northern and southern hemispheres. Because of the Earth's movement and its spinning, that creates a bulge out at that space. So rather than it being a perfect sphere, it creeps out at those spots. So it comes out of the sides. We call that the equatorial bulge. Now, we know that one day is composed of what we see as day and night. That day and night is made up of the Earth making one full rotation, we call it rotation, along this axis that cuts through the middle of the Earth. What's important is that that axis is not straight up and down. It's tilted by 23.5 degrees. Now we'll talk about why that's important in just a few moments. But before we do, there's one other type of motion that's extremely important when it comes to the Earth. Not only is it rotating in circles along that axis, it's also moving around the sun in a specific orbit. We call that movement around the sun the revolution of the Earth. Revolutions, so moving all the way around that sun, is going to take 365 days and 1/4 extra day. What we do with that 1/4 extra day is we add it every 4th year. That's what we call leap year. So we have these two motions, rotation, which is daily, and revolution that happens once every 365.25 days. Now, one of the reasons these movements are so important is because of the impact they have on weather as well as the seasons. So we see the seasons as fall, spring, summer, and winter. These are caused by two things. The sun is constantly pushing out heat that goes towards the Earth. The first thing that leads to the seasons, or reasons for the seasons, is how many hours of daylight a part of the Earth is going to get per day. You see that the equator tilts up towards the sun. The equator is the warmest part of the Earth because it gets the most daylight hours, the most amount of time exposed to the sunlight. The North and South poles, which have a lot of ice, have less time exposed to the poles and less time exposed to the sun. And one other thing, how intense is that light? Is it direct and concentrated, or is it spread out over a long space? You can see the sun coming right at that equator is very, very focused. It's very direct, like when you put sunlight through a magnifying glass. But the further away from the equator you get, the less focused it is and the less intense that heat is going to be. So it's going to cause cooler weather. So one more time, the reasons for the seasons, how much time is a certain area getting exposed to sunlight, and how intense is that sunlight. As we rotate daily, as well as move with that revolution all the way around the sun, the distance we are from the sun will dictate those seasons. So the further away a certain part of the Earth is going to be, the closer to winter they are going to be, or the cooler the temperatures will be. Now within all of that, something that we see within the seasons are two important words, equinox and solstice. Equinox makes me think of equal or equal sign. And what an equinox is a day of the year when we have 12 hours of sunlight and 12 hours of daylight. Two of these exist. One in the spring, which is March 21st, 22nd, and one in the fall, which is September 21st, my brother's birthday. The other, the solstice, makes up the longest and shortest days of the year, longest being the most sunlight exposure and shortest being the least sunlight exposure. So on June 21st, we get the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. And on December 21st, we get the shortest day of the year, or the least amount of time exposed to the sun. So we're going to continue to look at how the Earth moves, and we're going to get a better idea of how these seasons interact in our next lesson as we looked at the orbit that the Earth will take around the sun, as well as the orbit that the other planets take.